He's been recording this the whole time, as he always does. And I was actually surprised because Chris and I had a long conversation, as I told you.
Yeah.
And then he goes, "Oh no, I recorded it all."
Well, of course he did. I don't know why you get surprised.
I'm surprised every time.
I know, it's good. It's good that you keep the cloak of mystery over.
The cloak of mystery. Right. Okay. Today on 50 and Coping, I am joined by somebody I've known for a very long time. To my left is Chris, and to my right is Lee, who you met last time. Chris, can you tell everyone who you are and what you do for a living now?
Yeah, so my name is Chris Love. I work in the field of addiction treatment. I'm kind of at the front end of people's recovery journey, in as much as I run the admissions for a non-residential intensive outpatient program based in London.
Wow. Non-residential?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the traditional, if that's the right term, idea as to how people access addiction treatment is that they go away to rehab. Yeah. So they go away to a country house in the leafy Kent or somewhere, spend 28 days engaged in initially detox, so that's separation from the substance, and then a process of intensive psychotherapy, and that's great. I have no axe to grind against that process. That was my experience of accessing treatment in a very different model, but evidence shows that the outcomes from that process are not great. No. You're wrapped up in a cotton wool kind of environment, and you're ill-equipped to deal with the inevitable challenges that life's going to present to you when you're released back into the wild.
Yeah.
So intensive outpatient programs are something that's really gained traction in the US.
Okay.
For a number of reasons. Employers like them because they're less disruptive. They don't have to lose their staff. Yep. Families love them because there's far few questions to answer about where's daddy gone for 28 days.
Fair point. Yeah.
And in terms of the outcomes, they're effective because you are in that process of the intensive psychotherapy, whilst you are continuing to face up to the inevitable challenges that life is going to throw your way. Okay. For some of us that's walking around the supermarket, for some of us that's walking down the high street. Yeah. But you're getting the support whilst you are in the real world. So there's a real value.
I can see the value in that. Yeah. The only thing, because I'm understanding of the human condition, is there's got to be an awful lot of trust involved in that freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. There's limitations as to who that approach is appropriate for.
So are they vetted? You don't take everyone? Or?
No, and that's my role. Is I assess people to understand their suitability, their motivation. Yeah. If somebody is so physically afflicted as I was, that they need that period in a residential environment to support them through the ambulatory, the clinical detox, then it's not safe to do that in the community.
Get that.
If somebody is not motivated to bring about a change, then we're not going to get a good outcome with them.
No. Can I know this is early on, but getting into that, if people aren't willing to change, they won't change, even though they pay lip service to doing something like your process?
Yeah.
So you can see the reality, can you, between the ones that can and can't function in your world?
It's a challenge, but generally, to me, having lived in this world, in the recovery world, for 15 years, and then having many years of experience prior to that, it makes it relatively easy to identify who is motivated. Yeah. And the motivation, I don't really care what the motivation is. I guess what I'm looking for is, has somebody experienced that internal snap? Yeah. That you've experienced, that I've experienced. Yeah. Whereby they've recognised that I just can't do this on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the rock bottom that you've mentioned before?
I'm really opposed to the term rock bottom. Okay. because the term to me, the term, and it is semantics, yeah. But to me, the term rock bottom suggests that it's something outside of me, and that it's got more to do with the consequences and the circumstances that have come about as a result of my substance use or my drinking, yeah. Now, I experienced, I describe myself as a low bottom alcoholic, yeah. The last knockings of my drug use and my drinking were filthy, yeah. I was essentially living in a squat. I was physically dependent upon alcohol. I was shoplifting vodka. I was getting nicked on a regular basis. That's from the outside looking in is a rock bottom.
Yeah.
To me, the only rock bottom is dead. Yeah.
Okay.
And the snap can occur regardless of what's going on outside of you. A lot of the people that I work with are seemingly functioning at a relatively high level. So again, from the outside looking in, they're paying the bills, they're turning up at work, they're managing to wear the mask. Yeah. They look okay, and that can be as dangerous as the situation that I found myself in. Yeah. Because the very fact that you look all right, yeah, keeps you going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This also shows that there are a myriad of different directions of addiction. Yeah. So where we were talking with Sean, who is on the front line, he sees trigger orientated rock bottom from that level, because these people a lot of them are homeless, a lot of them are down on their luck and have, in a puerile fashion, reached rock bottom. Yeah, but there are people who are functioning addicts.
So is that snap the point at which you realise that you need to do something?
Yeah.
So you could have been in that state for some considerable time,
absolutely.
But then you go, right,
absolutely.
And you hit that, didn't you? You hit that decision point. I can't do this anymore.
There becomes a time with me. I mean, rock bottom kind of does suggest for me in as much as that I had nothing. Mm-hmm. I was going nowhere. I was insularly on my own taking drugs, and I was chasing some high that I could never get, which is the fastest way to kill yourself.
Oh yeah.
And then I knew what I was doing at all points, and I woke up one morning after the hospital thing, and we'd done all that. My kidneys packed in, and then in that moment, in that room with nothing in it, I snapped.
Yeah.
I can't do this on my own, but I kind of did. But that's the thing. I did. What the help I sought was distancing myself from the life I was living, took myself out of my social, group, but also went to the doctor and said, right, look, this is what I've been doing for the last 15 years, 10 years. I'm fucked.
And there's so much power in that, isn't there? And it's difficult as men. Yeah? It's difficult as men of a certain age and from a certain background, to talk about how we feel. And we in that moment we're walking a fine line between humiliation, the reality of my circumstances, and the humility to actually surrender. The gig's up. I can't do this.
The word is surrender.
And there's so much power in that.
It
doesn't feel like it at the time, but there is so much power in that surrender. And that's what I'm looking for when I'm assessing people in that particular role that I fulfill. Is are they at that place? Now the problem with that place is that it's a narrow window of opportunity. Because the mind wants to convince us that we've got this. That actually 3 days later wasn't that bad.
Things aren't that bad. We don't need help.
So it's a real narrow window of opportunity to actually connect with somebody.
Also, addiction, as part of it is your amazing ability to lie to yourself and others.
Oh yeah. So master manipulators.
Absolutely. Because if you think about it, you're skint and you've got nowhere to go, but you still manage to function and get the drugs. You find a way to find that money, to get that money, to lie to people, to get them to give to you. I think you told me a story once where they were coming for you. Were you on a narrow boat? And we don't need to. But no details given. But we've both been in a situation where there are people coming for us. Because of the lies we've told, and that is not a way to live.
No.
But you have to find it in yourself to say, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, so you and I, like we've just, you use the 12 steps.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we I just want to scratch the surface of the 12 steps.
Okay.
Right? You've been in that program for how long?
So I went into rehab in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yet I am going to be celebrating 13 years of continuous sobriety in 2 weeks' time.
Wow.
So if your maths is any good, you'll realise that there was a little blip.
There's a blip.
Yeah,
Right.
there was a blip.
So
I've been around recovery for round about 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm 13, coming up to 13 years.
So you and I are exactly more or less exactly. How odd?
Yeah.
We're exactly clean the same time. So that's an amazing thing. So well done. It's just so eye-opening to me the different ways there are for people to get ready, get clean, and get out of it. I mean, I have a problem, right? And you're going to pick me to bits with the higher power.
I'm not going to pick you to bits at all.
No, but you should probably, right? I don't have a belief in God, but that's not what that's about, is it?
No, not at all.
So can you explain a little bit about the 12 steps?
And that was my experience. When I was offered the opportunity to go into treatment, back in 2008, and the landscape was very different then. You know, I was engaged with the local drug and alcohol service. I was living up in Suffolk at the time. Because I was a terrible shoplifter, I was getting arrested regularly and ended up being referred to the drug and alcohol service.
Okay.
And what they were offering, it worked for me. Right. I had to turn up there every week and I'd go to group sessions and they were trying to give me some help. And because I was compliant, they offered me the opportunity to go into rehab.
Okay.
Yeah? And the model then was very different. So you got funding from the local authority to start with, which is just nigh on impossible now, right? Yeah. And you'd get 3 months of primary treatment, 3 months of secondary treatment. So it was a 6-month funded gig. Yeah. I'd had no exposure to 12-step. I'd had no exposure to anything resembling recovery in my life at that point.
Okay.
When they offered me that opportunity, my response was, I'm not going to one of those fucking 12-step places.
Right, yeah.
Right? That was my instant response, yeah?
Okay.
Having no experience of it other than what Hollywood's shown me.
Yeah.
And what Hollywood's shown me is that I'm condemning myself to a life of sitting in church halls, drinking bad coffee, listening to people talking about how they think they feel, yeah? And it's going to be miserable. Okay. Right? I couldn't have been any more wrong.
Okay, that's an amazing realisation to see. So
it took me a while.
Yeah, I bet. So
it took me a while.
Okay, so to get help back when you did, because of your crime, because of all the things on the radar that were seen, they offered you this funding.
Yeah, and I was physically unwell. Yeah. I was physically dependent upon alcohol. It would have been dangerous. I was at risk of fits and seizures had I stopped drinking at that point.
Yeah.
I also was misdiagnosed as having bipolar disorder. It transpires that if you spend a week sniffing coke and then you spend 2 weeks drinking a bottle of vodka a day and a 3-litre bottle of White Lightning, and then you present to the doctor and describe how you're feeling, it might look like you're bipolar. Yeah. And in between that, there's that little sweet spot where you've got some coke and you've got some vodka, and you're like, I'm hypomanic. Well, no, I'm not.
No,
I've just got that sweet spot. Yeah. So I had the bipolar diagnosis as well. So I guess the dual diagnosis thing helped me get access to the funding. Now, funnily enough, it transpires that I'm not bipolar. Right. And it took longer for them to detox me off the bipolar meds than it did for them to separate me from alcohol.
Okay.
So that was why I was given access to the treatment that I got.
Okay, how does that look then? So you've done that, you're compliant. How does that look when you go in for the first time to 12-step? So for me, the first
10 days are a blur. Right, I'm going through the detox process. Back then they used diazepam, which is fantastic. I'm a big fan of Valium. I spent a year in India, and Valium is very easily available over the counter there, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. So the detox to me was a blur. I turned up there, and it's interesting. This goes back to what Sean was talking about last week around trauma. And I love a label, right? I loved it when they gave me the bipolar diagnosis. It made perfect sense to me. This is why I am the way that I am.
So it gave you an excuse to hide behind?
It gave me an excuse. It gave me a justification for all of my terrible behaviour, for all of my dark thoughts. It just made sense to me. So I turn up at this treatment centre in Weston-super-Mare. So I've never been had any exposure to 12-step recovery before. B, clearly I've never been to Weston-super-Mare before, because why on earth would I elect to go to Weston-super-Mare?
Weston-super-Mud is where I grew up in Somerset.
It's fondly known as Weston-super-nightmare amongst certain people that I know. So I turn up there. I literally poured out of the car. And I'm armed with a double-barreled flamethrower, right? It's everybody else's fault that I'm here.
Double-barreled flamethrower, excellent.
And what happens very quickly is that gets smashed out of me. That gets smashed out of me in a loving and compassionate way, because what they do for me is they give me an opportunity to diagnose myself as having this problem. So I'm given the opportunity to look at my experience around my substance use. And going back to what you were going to ask me about the 12-step process, this is the starting point for the 12-step process. Is that self-diagnosis.
Is it fundamentally important to find out that this is your fault?
It's fundamentally important for me. To find out that it's not everybody else's fault.
Gotcha.
That's the important thing, and that really for me was the starting point. Was to stop blaming everybody else. If you'd have my life, you'd do what I do, right? Now I've got a sister who's 2 years and 1 day younger than me. She had my life. She did not do what I do.
No.
She had the same childhood experiences as me, nothing deeply traumatic, the same upbringing as me. Probably the most traumatic thing in my childhood was the fact that I was brought up in Leicester. Thankfully, I'm not a football fan. We were talking about rugby earlier. So no, there was no justification or excuse out of me as to what was going on. So then naturally is what I start to do is look inwards and start blaming myself. Well, it's not my fault either. So that diagnosis phase, that step one, is coming to understand that there's a possibility that I may have an illness. So when they talk in step one about admitting we were powerless over alcohol, so I have lost the power of choice. Alcohol, drugs, change the wording, I have lost the power of choice over whether I'm going to do this thing or not. Right? Now, that resonated with me, because I would wake up, come to, and make a firm decision that I'm not fucking doing this again. I am not doing this again. I got nicked, I got, whatever happened, I got beaten up, I got fired, I got evicted, all the consequences, and I would make a firm promise to myself that I am not doing this again. 11 o'clock, I'm doing it again. 3 days later, I'm doing it. I have lost the power of choice over whether I'm going to do this or not.
That's valuable way of putting that, because addiction, like I've been trying to say, is the fact that you're not able to stop doing what you're doing without circumstances changing.
And there is a strange mental blank spot, is one of the terms. that they use within in 12-step recovery, that I cannot recall with sufficient force. Now I'm paraphrasing, just how fucking awful it was last time I got myself into this mess. And I absolutely believe that next time it's going to be different, despite all of the evidence that it's not. I believe that it's going to be different. I'm just going to have a line. I'm just going to have half a bag. I'm just going to have a pint. And then the really strange thing happens is I have that first one, right? And something happens to me that doesn't happen to other people, is that I experience an abnormal reaction once the first one goes in, that means that I set in motion a thing called the phenomenon of craving, right? Now, a phenomenon is just something we don't understand. It's an abnormal reaction. It's an allergic reaction to substances, to alcohol. So I can't just have one. Once that first one goes in, all bets are off. And I was really fortunate. So I was 37 years old when I went into rehab. I started drinking and using at 15 years old. Right? So I had a vast period of time to draw upon of using a wide variety of sources of substances. And I was given the opportunity when I went into treatment to look at my experience around everything. Can I smoke one joint? Can I have, in 1988, my family moved down south. People were driving around the M25 listening to repetitive beats, having a great time in fields. I was there dribbling in the corner of the chill out room, taking 45 minutes to roll an unsmokable joint. So I was there. I didn't love it the way that they loved it. Can I have just one pill? Can I have just, a bomb of speed, a line of speed? Can I have one line of Coke? No, I can't. So my experience shows me that once that first one goes, can I have one drink? I can't do it. Once that first one goes in, all bets are off. I'm off to the races.
That's it. So there's no hard feeling. Weirdly, the alcohol was the reason I started doing coke. So I could be at the bar the longest. I could outdrink anyone. And in the circles I was moving in, you needed to keep your wits about you a little bit. So, but then I never had a problem with alcohol. I never had that thing with alcohol, but with cocaine, I always wondered how people could stop. So there was a 3-line rule, right? If I'd had 2 lines, there is a possibility, I thought, in my head that I could walk away that night. Full on bullshit. But if I took the 3rd, that's me done, and I'm not coming off until everything's finished. And then when everything is finished, I will call someone, whatever the time it is, and I will get more. And sadly, I was in a position of always being able to get more, and was in a position to start with where I had all the money I needed, so it didn't matter. When we met at the Marquee, that had got to the stage then where I had severed ties with those people. And, I was living a different world, which meant that I had to then deal to make my own. But I always wondered why, like I say, everyone else would do their gram and go, oh, you know what, I'm going home and go to bed. Go and do it. And I couldn't stop.
There's those, they buy a gram on a Thursday night. Right? So my background was in the advertising and marketing world. So in the 90s in Soho, Thursday night was the night out, right? So we and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that we would all do it. Right? So we would all go out on a Thursday night, we'd all buy a gram. Some of them would put half of that gram in their top drawer. And then take it out again next Thursday.
How does that work?
Now that is fucking drug abuse, right? That is drug abuse, because that half a gram, their half a gram, because I've still got mine in my pocket, but I know where theirs is, So I'm having theirs and I'm taking mine with me, right? At that point, How do they do that?
That's the same as chocolate. Okay, so I can buy a bar of chocolate, have one strip of it, and stick the rest in the fridge. My wife doesn't understand that concept.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
lots of people don't.
Absolutely.
You have to eat the whole bottle.
And it's really, that's really interesting, because the identification that people get, whether it's a behavioural addiction, yeah, or whether it's alcohol, whether it's other substances, the identification that people get with that phenomenon of craving that I've just described is really helpful. It's a really good hook for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't identify with that. You do identify with that around cocaine, yeah, but you don't have that experience with alcohol.
No.
And that's cool.
Well, I'm lucky, I suppose.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I wish I was like you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. You know, I'm grateful to be in recovery, but I'm not grateful to be afflicted with the condition that
absolutely.
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, my life would be a lot easier if I didn't have to live this way. Yeah, and that's why that diagnosis phase in 12-step recovery is so important, because if you don't identify as that type of alcoholic, as that type of addict, then why on earth would we ask you to embark on this way of living, because that's what the 12-step program is, yeah, if you're not going to get the value from it, if you don't need it. Yeah, it's like any, and I look at addiction, substance use, in the same way that many conditions are recognised now as there being a spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the 12-step program is kind of for those people who are more heavily afflicted.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where it's really effective. Yeah, if you need to bring about a significant change in your thinking and your behaviour to drive a wedge between you and substances, then in my experience the 12-step program is an effective way of doing that. Not the only.
Okay, no, but an effective way.
Effective way of doing that.
Okay.
But it's important that you qualify yourself before you embark on that process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. I need to understand the need for belief in a higher power.
Okay.
Now, a higher power to me suggests God.
Yeah.
So, and I don't. Well, can you explain 12-step perception of a higher power?
And I think this is really interesting, and the 12 steps were written in the 1930s in America.
By who?
Right? So the way in which they came about is you've got he described himself and early AA writing describes this chap Bill Wilson, right? And they describe him as a New York stockbroker.
Okay.
Right? He's a chancer, right? And he is presenting to a clinic in New York for detoxes over and over and over again, right? It's called the Towns Hospital. It's run by this guy called Dr. Silkworth. And they cannot understand why, despite the fact that we've successfully separated this guy from the alcohol, he leaves the hospital and he goes and drinks again.
Yeah.
Right? So he ends up getting hooked up with a religious organisation called the Oxford Group, who were pretty hardcore.
Okay.
Right? They had these 4 absolutes, and I should know them, but I can't recall them instantly. But they're pretty tough morals to live up to.
Okay.
Right? Through a series of events, an old friend of his knocks on the door one night. He's sat at his kitchen table, tying one on, drinking what they describe as bathtub gin. Yeah?
Oh, nice.
He sees his friend at the door, thinks it's fantastic. This is an opportunity for me to get pissed with my old mate. Opens the door and his mate's looking healthy. And he's thinking, what the hell is going on here? So it transpires that his friend has been introduced via another friend to a process, yeah, that has enabled him to get sober.
Right.
The friend had spent a year with Carl Jung,
Right.
yeah, one of the forefathers of modern psychiatry.
Yep.
This was a wealthy young lad. His parents had shipped him off to Austria or Germany or wherever. He'd spent the year in Europe and then come back to the States, and lo and behold, he'd drunk again. So they get in touch with Carl Jung. What the hell's going on? Carl Jung admits that I can't help you. What I've been trying to do is introduce a kind of moral psychology, a spiritual change in you. And I haven't been able to do it. With all the knowledge that I haven't been able to do it. I suggest you go out and seek, right? Bill Wilson starts to kind of form these ideas about what recovery could look like for him. Yeah, goes off and explores a bit of religion, realises that's a bit too much. Does come to the understanding that the way forward is for me to help somebody else. So he's away on a business trip in Ohio, finds himself in a hotel, realises he's going to drink, phones somebody up, you need to find me an alcoholic, I need to go and help somebody else. He gets introduced to this doctor, proctologist.
Right, lovely.
Right. So the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous are a New York chancer and a proctologist from Akron in Ohio.
God. Right.
They come together. Bill Wilson tells his story. Dr. Bob identifies. They then go off and speak to another guy.
Okay.
And thus this thing starts to grow. So they're drawing bits of ideas from a doctor who runs a detox centre about this allergy that I've described. They're drawing bits from psychiatry, from Carl Jung, about the moral change. It's 1930s America. They're drawing bits from Christianity. There's no getting away from it at that point. But what they recognise, is that they need, and no pun intended, it needs to be a broad church. No pun intended. They need to make this thing inclusive. So they coin the phrase, or they use the phrase, a God of your own understanding. It's not religious in any way, shape or form. Now, 1930s America, let's be honest, it was religious. But the world's changed. So if in step 1, we're looking at the 12 steps still, we admit that we're powerless over alcohol, we've lost the power of choice, I have no power in my life, and my life has become unmanageable. My thinking preceding the first drink is off key. Moving into step 2, we start to look at, okay, well, where have my attempts of my own power to address this problem failed me? I can't solve this, but maybe, just maybe, there's something that can. So we come to believe, that a power greater than myself, we're not talking about God at all at this point, we're not talking about religion, so we begin to believe that there's a power greater than me that can restore me to sanity. That's quite attractive.
It is in a way, but isn't that power directly resulting from you, though? So isn't it you in total? Because you're obviously in the power. So
of course it is. So, but deep down, so we can call it what we want to call it, But deep down, and it's always here, right? This is when I'm doing shit that I know that I've got no business doing. This is where it hurts me. So deep down inside me is the fundamental idea of right and wrong. But I have lacked the ability to tap into that. So this is about connection. This is about connection. Now, in our addiction, we are utterly disconnected. We're isolated. We're sat in darkened rooms, peeking through blinds. You don't want to see my internet search history in that moment in time. I mean, I am totally disconnected. So what I'm seeking is connection. I don't even know I'm seeking connection. But deep down inside is the fundamental idea. It's not about a man in the clouds.
No.
It's about connection.
Is that connection, and I'm probably reaching, but is that connection that you're looking for then provided by a room full of like-minded people in that moment?
I think what happens is you begin to connect to the concept of a power, because you're looking around that room, you're hearing the stories of other people who've been where you've been, and Sean spoke about this last week, the importance of that lived experience. It wasn't till I connected with somebody who'd experienced what I experienced that I began to get some hope that there was a way out of this. You know, I look at that guy sat in front of me, and I know that he's done the shit that I've done. I know that he's felt and thought the way that I have felt and thought, and I see that he's found another way of living.
Yep.
So my inspiration, yeah, and that's to be inspired. To be in spirit, yeah, starts in that moment, yeah, through that connection with other people who have found a way out of this, and there's a real power in that.
Yeah, I also, I mean, going fundamentally, I just had a tangent thought, right? The two guys that the one guy that started it, right, needed to not drink, so he had to find somebody else to help.
Yeah.
Right? Now, that's the self-made angel syndrome that I wrote that song about, and when I came out of that recovery, right, it didn't stop me using, but and my first reaction was, I need to help people. I need to tell people what I know, and I never did, because, you know, I got sidetracked by life. But is that why do you think so many people who come out of addiction, you know, pretty fast want to then impart knowledge or do anything, or do they? Is that the give back syndrome? You know, you need to make amends.
It's well, the 12th step of the 12-step program is carry this message.
Right.
Yeah?
Okay.
You
So
know,
that is part of it.
is having had a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
And a spiritual awakening just means to be inspired, to be reconnected, to be alive. Yeah. As the result of going through the preceding 11 steps, we tried. Yeah. We tried to carry this message to other alcoholics.
Yep.
Yeah. And to practice these principles in all our affairs. It goes on, right? So it's our responsibility. Not just those of us in 12-step recovery, because I know you know you do it in your way. You do it in your way.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And Sean absolutely does it. Yeah. And so it's our responsibility to help other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there also a comfort in that in the first place?
Of course there is.
And is there also a does that also help you stay clean? Seeing the people at
absolutely.
the early stages.
So in so many ways. So it reminds us where we came from, which is really important, because it's very easy to forget just how awful it was. And there's a really cool analogy. You know, it's the guy stuck in a hole, right? And you've got people walking past telling him how to get out. Yeah. And then you've got those of us that, and then some, you know, an alcoholic, yeah, jumps in the hole with him, right? And he's like, "Don't worry, mate. I've been here. I know the way out. Let's do it together." Yeah. Yep. Sorry, I've told the story really badly, but hopefully you get the gist.
No, I get it. No, I fully understand.
And so it's our responsibility. It helps us without doubt. Yeah. And at our essence, I think when we are in the grips of addiction, we are selfish. Yeah. So we practice behaviours that are the opposite of that. So if my natural state when I'm in the grips of addiction is to be selfish, if I can practice selfless acts, yeah, then the old self begins to die, and it becomes more natural to me.
Yeah.
Because I can't think my way out of this problem. Yeah.
Because you
It
can't.
becomes habitual to be.
I've got to act my way into a new way of thinking, rather than think my way into a new way of acting.
Because you can't trust your thinking process, because that's what got you here in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh God. I just also there's a thing, you know, everyone sees and talks about tribalism being a bad thing. I think I've misunderstood tribalism, but when you look at a group of like-minded people who are in it, who know your situation and can relate, you can find the power to keep yourself straight by not leaning on them, but also, is there a feeling that if you do use, you're going to let these people down, or you might trigger someone else?
I that's not my experience. As I said, relapse was part of my experience.
Yeah.
And when I relapsed, I did not feel that I'd let my peers in recovery down.
Okay.
I felt safe to continue turning up at that 12-step fellowship meeting.
Right.
Those people reached out to me and supported me.
Good.
They told me the truth about myself as well. They weren't afraid to do that.
Yeah.
And I was able to hear that because I knew that they'd been there.
Yeah.
You know, the term that we don't shoot our wounded.
Yeah.
We don't shoot our wounded.
Yeah.
So there was no sense of having let anybody down in that community. Yeah, I absolutely felt that I'd let my family down because they just started to regain trust and confidence in me.
Yeah.
I had just started to regain trust and confidence in me, and bang, just like that happened.
I guess that's the original safe space, isn't it? That you know that you can be vulnerable in that situation.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be judged.
Yeah.
You're just going to be helped.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. You know, and again, the arms went round. You know, I'm not a big hugger. I know that there's a lot of hugging in that 12-step world. Yeah. But metaphorically, the arms went round me, and they were like, "Come with me, mate. Don't worry."
Yeah.
I think that's fundamentally, I think, what we're trying to achieve through the pod, really, and other stuff I do in men's mental health is the same stuff that we keep coming up with, the lived experience of, you know, even going through divorce. You know, people, there's this feeling that you're weak for not being able to cope with a particular situation, whatever that situation is. And as soon as you start talking to other people about it in a safe space, you realise you're not alone. You realise you've got people that have been through the same stuff. Yeah, you're not abnormal for the way you've reacted.
Yeah,
to it, so.
and regardless of the situation, that identification, that lived experience, that shared experience is really powerful. That initial sense of, thank God it's not just me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because there's this whole stiff upper lip thing of not talking about your emotions and all that stuff. And I think that's what we're trying to, what all of the focus on men's mental health at the moment is about, trying to make people more comfortable with talking about how they feel. Yeah.
And you know, who'd have thought that, you know, the pandemic, so many great things have come out of the pandemic, in as much as, you know, the conversation about mental health, you know, the acknowledgement that to a lesser or greater degree we're all suffering with the human condition, and that we can talk about these things now, particularly for men of a certain age.
Also, men of a certain stature. I mean, if I can sit here in front of these wonderful 4K cameras with my friends talking about the way I feel about things, and I am not touchy-feely, I do not feel the need to tell the world how I feel. But what I do need, or I do feel the need to say, that if you need to talk to someone, it's okay, you know, and it is okay to voice the fact that, you know, you feel vulnerable, or you feel threatened or frightened or something else. It doesn't necessarily point to a weakness. I've never been a weak human being. I'm not a weak human being now. But what I am now is I'm clean of drugs, you know, and hopefully that will carry on. Otherwise, the shit will hit the fan, you know. And also, I'm in a position where I have life experience, and I'm facing this whole 50 years old thing, which seems to be this huge fucking reason, but it's the reason we're all in this room. But the 12 steps is a way that, if it works for you, is fantastic, and it is a support network, and you are a living example of the way that it works.
Well, there's fundamentally two different things going on, right? There's the 12-step program, which is the and I'm really clear on this as to what the 12-step program is. There are lots of self-appointed recovery gurus running around at the moment saying that the 12-step program, everybody needs a 12-step program. It's a cure-all for everything, right? We know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to say his name. Skinny twat from Essex. And that devalues the 12-step program, right? The 12-step program is one thing and one thing only, and that is a relapse prevention program, with benefits.
Okay.
Right? Alongside that, you've got your 12-step fellowships. Yeah.
Right.
There's the meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah. But fundamentally two different things. And there's been periods of time where the people, the dependence has moved away from the program and on to the fellowship.
Right.
If my sobriety depended upon me sitting in a church hall 5, 3, 7 nights a week with other people, can't use, man.
Yeah.
That's miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah. What the 12-step program has done is driven a wedge between me and the first one, and given me a very practical and pragmatic set of tools, that enable me to walk free. Yeah.
And freedom is the point. You're during your addiction user times, you're controlled totally by a substance.
Yeah.
And in that controlled moment, you might think that you're free taking this drug and you're getting high and you feel better about life for that, 2 hours or whatever it is, in 3 weeks or whatever, but it's actually you're controlled by something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and it's not living in fear as well. It's not living in fear. The freedom, I don't have alcohol in my house, but there is alcohol in my house. Yeah. Yeah. I am not living. I go to restaurants, right? I go to bars when I need to. I go to gigs, festivals. I'm not living in fear.
No.
Of being in that environment. Yeah. I'm not going to walk in. I'm not going to hang out in a crack house.
No.
Right? But
it was interesting the other day when it was a couple of months ago, and I think I said this in Sean's one. I walked into a room full of people snorting lines of coke. My first reaction. And I know that I'm an addict, and I know that I would use again. But my first reaction wasn't, "I want to do that again." I was offered to, and I said, "Mate, I don't even want to be you the day after tomorrow."
Yeah.
And that alone was astounding to me as I walk out. I went, "Oh, fucking hell, look at that!" So there's growth involved as well as a thing. But I know as well that should I need a crutch, that's the first place I'm going. So weigh up pros and cons. What did you call it when you weigh up everything?
Your cost-benefit analysis.
Right, that's the second person.
That's not my phrase.
No, that's the second person on the show to say that. Right, look, we're already at 50 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, believe it or not. Right, I need to talk to you about. Right, we've mentioned Carl Jung again. Yeah. Right, and then you said something to me in a message about the second stage of life.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Well, and here we go. So I've just spent some time trying to sort of dispel some of the myths that exist around 12-step recovery and the religious aspect of it, right? And now I'm going to chuck something in about that came to me from a Franciscan monk. So let me precursor this, right? Throughout the course of my recovery, I've never felt the compulsion to attend any organised religious event other than a wedding or a funeral. Yeah.
Okay.
Too many fucking funerals.
Yeah, man.
I'm not a religious man. I'm not a member of any religious organisation at all. But there's this great Franciscan monk who is very 12-step friendly. Yep. Really understands us. Who's written some cool stuff, right? But the second stage of life phrase, if you like, started with Carl Jung. And the experience that I have around this comes to me from a Franciscan monk called Richard Rohr, who wrote a great book called Falling Upwards, which is a spirituality for the second half of life. Is how he frames it.
When is he nowadays?
He's still going. Yeah, he runs a thing called the Centre for Contemplation or something out in the States. Okay. He's a Franciscan monk, so he lives the way a Franciscan monk lives. Right. But he's very, very insightful, and where it's relevant to me, and I'm not going to quote him. I'm just going to paraphrase it and come at it from my own personal experiences. Yeah. We spend the first half of our lives, filling the container with the stuff that society conditions us to believe that it should be filled with, right? And that is, it can be material stuff, it can be values, and it's the Trinity, right? The car, the house, the girl, the career, the watch, or whatever it might be, or the values. And those of us that have been so fortunate to have fallen, I think, find it easier to access the second half of life, which is when we suddenly come to realise that actually the container may well be half full of the wrong stuff. Yeah. What's really important? Because they're not looking. Yeah. No one cares what I've got on the drive.
Yeah.
No
the
one
Joneses.
cares what I've got on my wrist. And I may well have accumulated a lot of that shit, and yet I'm still not complete. I'm still not connected to me. Yeah. So, and the second half of life, second stage of it's not about being 50. It's not about, there are people that never enter that phase.
Yeah.
There are people there's men in their 60s, yeah, driving bright blue Porsches, wearing white skinny jeans with a Rolex on, yeah, thinking that's what it's all about. Now, they're not in our circle.
No.
Right?
No, they're not. No.
They're not in our circle. And cool, that's fine for them. They may never enter into that second stage of life. Yeah. But when my experience is that, and this is why I was so interested with the 50 and coping concept, because my experience is 50 and thriving.
Excellent.
Right? That's my experience. Yeah. And what happened to me was that I hit a stage in my life, yeah, whereby suddenly what is really important became apparent to me. Yeah. Yeah. And so I start taking the stuff that's got no value out of the container. Not just the physical stuff, but the values. Yeah. Yeah. You've got to have a really successful career. You've got to have a mortgage. You've got to be, all that shit. Yeah. That for me isn't right. And I start putting stuff that's got more substance to it and more meaning to it into the container. And lo and behold, the container gets lighter. Yeah. Yeah. The fuller it gets, the lighter it is. Yeah. Yeah. But that's an amazing. And it's, I spoke about, we were talking about rugby before. I've reconnected with my love of rugby as a result of this experience. Right. That has taken me to a place where I've reconnected with my hometown. And I've rewritten the narrative about my childhood because I get to go back to Leicester every time Leicester Tigers play at home. Tigers, yeah. Yeah. And the benefits and the gifts of that experience are just, abundant. And it's so simple. Yeah. Get rid of the shit that doesn't mean anything. Because at the end of the day, all the baubles and the trinkets and everything like that, and a lot of people talk about this, pay lip service to it, but have no belief in it. But it makes total sense to me, being somebody who drives a 2008 Mondeo and don't give a shit. I live in a rented house because I don't have a mortgage and all of these things, and I don't have trinkets. But what I do have is a family life. I have a business that I believe in, and I'm not chasing the money. I'm chasing the ability to please the people that come through. That seems to be more important to me. Obviously I need to pay bills, right? Of course. But above all the bullshit, right, there seems to be a new way of thinking for me that has only happened recently that is about customer service. It's about providing my own happiness by the others receiving what they get. Yeah, and this is it's and I guess the easiest way to look at the container is in terms of the physical items, is in terms of the shiny shit that we don't need yet. But what you've just described is coming to an understanding as to what my values are. Yeah, what's important to me, what makes me feel whole, and it's personal. Yeah. This isn't a formula, but the formula is you have to understand inside yourself what's important to you. Yeah, there's no dogma, and there's a place for dogma, there's a place for doctrine. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. No. But in this context, it's a personal journey, right? Yeah. And what is that if it's not spiritual? Absolutely. What is that if it's not spiritual? Yeah, because am I inspired? Am I in spirit? Am I nourished? Yeah. Do I belong? Do I feel at peace? Yeah. What is that if it's not spiritual? Yeah. And that's not religion. That's nothing to do with spirituality. Nothing to do with religion. Nothing to do with religion. Do you know what? That we're going to have to end, and I can't believe that's the fastest flipping hour I've ever spent in my entire life. I'm so sorry. I've monopolised. No, listen. That's beautiful. Everyone's bored of me talking. Promise me one thing. You'll come back and we'll finish the rest of it. Absolutely. All right. And I said this last time, but if you find yourself in a position where you are struggling with your mental health, with your ability just to move about and live your life,
try and talk to somebody. In the description, the doobleys underneath this video, we will always put links to the Samaritans Mental Health. Where it's appropriate, we need to find the right people and the right way to get people help. So, you know, we will put some things in. Also, this Franciscan monk and his teachings.
Yeah.
I think there should be a link to that somewhere. Absolutely. So I'm going to get Chris to that. Listen, thank you so much for coming in, Chris.
Thank you.
Really lovely. Take care of yourselves. And if you need to talk to somebody, there is no stigma attached to that. This has been 50 in Coping. I'll see you next time.